Welcome to Regis Pre-Algebra. This is Lesson 26A, and we're going to be covering sections 6.12 and 6.13 regarding probability. So before we do that, I'd like to review a little bit. Let's go ahead and give you some statistical data, and I'd like you to find the mean, the median, and the mode. So here's your problem. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points or bits of data that I've given you, 7 values, and I want you to find the mean, the median, and the mode. And while you're doing that, go ahead and think to yourself also, how would I define each of these words in the world of statistics? So put it on pause, and when you think you've got it, go ahead and play again, and you will see my answers. Okay, so I've gone ahead and figured these out for you and given you a very brief definition. So hopefully you are all doing that perfectly fine right now. Now I'd like to review one more thing, and that has to do with scale drawings. If the distance represented on a map uses the scale 1 inch to 150 miles, let's go ahead and find a couple conversions here. So here are two problems. If 1 inch equals 150 miles, so if 1 inch equals 150 miles, how much does what would 1.5 inches on your scale indicate how many miles, and what would 7/8 inch indicate how many miles? So go ahead and figure those two out and then check yourself against my work. So I went ahead and calculated these two. The first one is 225 miles. I illustrated that two ways. You could either, because 1.5 is not a very difficult number to think about. Okay, I take 1, and that would be 150, and a half more. So half of 150 is 75 more, and add those together. Or I can do it by proportion. 1 over 150 is my first ratio, and that is equal to 3/2. You must convert it to improper there. Over what? And then you cross multiply 1x, or just x, equals 150 times 3/2, and do the arithmetic. The second one, 7/8, is not very conducive to doing it any other way but the proportion way, and so that's what we illustrated down here. So if you are still struggling with that, I would suggest to go back to 611 and 610 and pick yourself a few more problems to practice. Now let's go on to the new idea, which is finding probability. Probability is talking about what is the likelihood, or what is the chance, or how often would you expect a certain thing to occur. Okay. So mathematical probability is the number expressed as a ratio that shows how likely it is that something will occur. Let me go ahead and write that definition for you. It is always expressed as a ratio with the number of favorable outcomes, that means what I want to occur, over the number of all possible outcomes. So let's say I'm talking about flipping a coin, and I only have 2 possible outcomes. Every time I flip that coin, it could come up heads or it could come up tails. So the number of possible outcomes are 2. Which one do I want? Well, let's say I want it to come up heads. So the number of favorable outcomes would be 1. So I would say that the probability of getting heads when I flip a coin would be 1 over 2. Let's say I'm going to let's say I'm going to have a die. I could have the numbers with just one die, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 6. So there are 6 possible outcomes. And let's say I want a 3. So what is the likelihood that I would get a 3 if I have 6 possible outcomes? That only occurs one time in all 6 of those possibilities, and so the probability of getting a 3 would be 1/6. Let's say I have a jar that contains 3 white marbles, 5 blue marbles, 2 green marbles, and 1 yellow marble. Now this gets to illustrate something more than just a 1 in the numerator. What if, so in all, I have, let's see, 11, right, marbles, and so there are 11 possible outcomes. If I draw my hand into the jar with my eyes closed and pull out a marble, and let's say I want to get a green one. Well, how many times can I get a green one? 2 of those 11. So the probability of getting green would be 2 11ths. What if I wanted to get a blue one? The probability of getting blue would be 5 11ths. So hopefully you see how this works. So go ahead, because I think this is fairly straightforward. I'd like you to work that section on your own. That is your homework assignment, 612. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're going into in 613. And then that'll be it. So let's look at that. Little bit more complexity with probability. If events are independent of one another, for independent events, let's say I have, let me get this written, independent events, but I'm going to do more than one event. Now I have a jar, let's say I have 2 jars. Okay, let me write down my situation here. And let's say I want to be able to draw first a red from jar 1 and a yellow from jar 2. Okay, so I want to have this outcome. I'll draw from each jar, and that's the outcome I want. Well, the probability that I would get a red from jar 1 would be 1/3. The probability that I would get a yellow from jar 2 would be 1/3. So my probability of getting both of these would be multiplying that together, 1/9. And you could kind of think that through to yourself. If I think, okay, what if I first drew a blue and then I drew a white? That's one possibility. What if I first drew a blue and then a yellow? What if I drew a blue and then an orange? What if I drew a red and then a white, a red and then a yellow? And that's the one I want, right? And a red and then an orange. See what I'm doing? I'm looking at all my possibilities. What if I drew a green and a white, or a green and a yellow, or a green and an orange? I have 9 possibilities in all, and only one of those possibilities was the red and yellow. So that's how we're thinking it through. The mathematics is to take the probability of each event, independent event, and then multiply them together. So I think that that's probably enough to get you very ready for 6.12 and 6.13. Now 6.14, if I look ahead to what you might have time to start working on in class, that is only a review. So I don't think we need to do any more on this tape. Pretty simple and straightforward for you. We'll see you in class.